It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
In the world of superhero movies, Batman Begins was not just impactful, but also influenced the production of many other movies of the same kind. What could have been the secret behind such a breakthrough? Join us as we unravel the mystery behind Batman Begins in just 20 weird facts. Number 20. The movie was inspired by Blade Runner. Christopher Nolan crafted Batman Begins without drawing inspiration from previous superhero movies. All he did was fix his gaze on the smoky, neon-soaked alleys of Los Angeles, specifically the dark, dystopian version portrayed in Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, a 1982 classic. Nolan said that Blade Runner has been a key visual influence for the aesthetics of Gotham City in his Batman reboot. Blade Runner redefined science fiction with its noir atmosphere, monolithic buildings, and rain-soaked streets. In interviews, Nolan explained that he admired how Blade Runner created a world that felt massive yet intimate. The influence is especially evident in the decaying, crime-ridden slum at the heart of Gotham. The narrow alleys, wet streets, flickering lights, and sense of despair feel ripped straight from Blade Runner's Los Angeles. However, the influence wasn't just in the aesthetic. Like Blade Runner, Batman Begins centers around themes of identity, fear, morality, and the blurred line between justice and vengeance. Although Blade Runner inspired Nolan, he didn't just want to reboot Batman, but wanted to explore what it meant for a man to become a myth and how that transformation would take a toll on his soul. Even the cinematography took notes from Blade Runner's style. Nolan and cinematographer Wally Pfister used natural light wherever possible and enhanced it with minimal artificial lighting and practical effects. Ultimately, Nolan did not just imitate but also paid tribute to Blade Runner. He borrowed its atmosphere, visual poetry, and grim emotional depth to build a Gotham that felt real, threatening, and cinematic in a whole new way. Number 19. Christopher Nolan had never directed an action film before Batman. When Warner Brothers handed the keys of the Batman franchise over to Christopher Nolan in the early 2000s, it was nothing short of a bold gamble. Before that time, Nolan had never directed a major action film, let alone a superhero blockbuster with a legacy as complicated and tarnished as Batman's. He was primarily known for cerebral, low-budget thrillers like Memento and Insomnia, not psychological suspense, explosions, car chases, and costumed vigilantes. Batman Begins was his first foray into big-budget action, and Warner Brothers was taking a risk by choosing a director who had never handled a project of this magnitude. Nolan approached Batman Begins not as a comic book film, but as a crime saga and character study. His inspiration was not just from Blade Runner and The Godfather, but from classic spy thrillers and intense detective films. He wanted to explore what it would take for a man to become psychologically, morally, and emotionally a Batman. Yet Nolan didn't shy away from the demands of action. His inexperience became one of his greatest strengths. To bring his vision to life, Nolan surrounded himself with an elite team of collaborators, including cinematographer Wally Pfister, composer Hans Zimmer, stunt coordinator Tom Struthers, and production designer Nathan Crowley. They all brought experience in areas Nolan hadn't explored before. The result was a refined version of what a superhero film would be. Nolan's so-called lack of experience turned into an asset, allowing him to bypass outdated formulas and deliver something new. Ironically, the man who had never directed an action movie before went on to set a new gold standard for action filmmaking in Hollywood. Number 18. The film's working title was The Intimidation Game. One of the most peculiar behind-the-scenes tactics used during the production of Batman Begins was the decision to shoot the film under a fake working title, which was The Intimidation Game. But why? At first glance, it sounds like the name of an intense spy thriller or psychological drama. But in reality, it was an industry trick used to keep curious fans, press, and paparazzi at bay during filming. When Batman Begins went into production, the public hadn't yet seen a serious, grounded Batman film. The anticipation around how the story would unfold was high. Given the internet's rapid growth in the early 2000s and the rabid online fandom around superhero properties, The production team and director Christopher Nolan knew that filming openly under the Batman name would invite chaos. There's a risk of leaks, location disruptions, and unwanted media attention that may compromise everything from plot secrecy to scene execution. So they created a fake title that had no obvious connection to Batman. Little did anyone know that one of the most influential superhero reboots of all time was being filmed right under their noses. Crew shirts, call sheets, and production paperwork all bore the fake title. Even some signage and location permits were filed under the intimidation game, helping to deflect attention from fans who might otherwise swarm the set. Ultimately, the fake title helped maintain the film's secrecy. It allowed Nolan and his team to build Gotham in relative peace, create bold set pieces without distraction, and preserve major plot secrets. Number 17. Gotham was built from scratch. While many modern blockbusters rely heavily on computer-generated imagery, Nolan opted to create massive, practical sets that gave Gotham a tangible, lived-in quality. In doing so, he grounded the Dark Knight's world in realism and intensity, redefining what audiences expect from superhero movies. Constructing Gotham from scratch was not a small undertaking. The production team, led by production designer Nathan Crowley, built a sprawling, multi-level city block known as the Narrows at the Cardington Sheds in Bedfordshire, England. This wasn't a partial set. It was an enormous, fully immersive cityscape complete with alleyways, water systems, underground levels, and towering structures. Nolan wanted Gotham to feel like a real urban nightmare, which would usually be claustrophobic, decaying, and dangerous. As he put it, the more real we can make the world, the more extraordinary Batman will feel in it. Practical sets also allowed actors to engage more organically with their environment. For Christian Bale, who played Bruce Wayne in Batman, walking through the Narrows or standing atop a real rooftop made the stakes feel more immediate. Number 16. Christian Bale lost and gained over 100 pounds for the role. One of the most extreme and shocking body transformations in Hollywood history was Christian Bale's preparation for Batman Begins. When he was cast as Bruce Wayne, Bale was coming straight off the set of The Machinist, a psychological thriller in which he played a man tormented by guilt and insomnia. For that role, Bale emaciated 120 pounds, surviving on little more than apples, coffee, and the occasional can of tuna. Then, in a display of sheer physical and mental commitment, Bale had to transform from that starved, fragile figure into the muscle-bound Dark Knight in just a few months. He had to become a symbol of strength, intimidation, and athleticism. So he hit the gym with a vengeance. Bale admitted in interviews that he gained over 100 pounds in just 6 months, primarily through an intense regimen of weight training, high-protein meals, and relentless calorie consumption. At some point, he went the extra mile, reaching about 230 pounds, which made him too big for the sleek and agile look Nolan envisioned for Batman. Although Nolan was impressed by Bale's dedication, his concern about his mobility led him to ask him to trim back down. So, Bale embarks on another journey of transformation, losing about 20 to 30 pounds to get to the ideal Batman physique. It was a grueling, calculated process. Bale's transformation set the tone for Batman Begins. Bale's body had to tell that story on its own, and he delivered. When audiences saw him shirtless in the League of Shadows training scenes or donning the Batsuit for the first time, they knew that this was a man who could become Batman. The performance earned him admiration, not only for his acting but also for the physical commitment he brought to the role. Number 15. The ninja training scenes were shot in Iceland.
Ninja understands that invisibility is a matter of patience and agility.
One of the most visually stunning parts of Batman Begins is Bruce Wayne's training with the League of Shadows, a secretive group of elite assassins led by Ra's al Ghul. What many fans don't realize is that these training scenes weren't shot on a soundstage or using green screen magic. They were filmed on the real frozen glaciers of Iceland. The crew had to travel to the Vatnajökull Glacier, one of Europe's largest and most dramatic ice fields. No CGI could have truly replicated the vastness, danger, and beauty of a glacier, and Nolan, a longtime advocate for practical filmmaking, insisted on shooting in a real, natural setting. However, filming in Iceland wasn't always easy. The cast and crew faced freezing temperatures, unpredictable weather, and the stressful process of hauling equipment to such a remote place. One of the most iconic scenes features Bruce battling Ducard atop a frozen lake. It was shot on an actual glacial lagoon that was just solid enough to hold their weight. The risk was real. Nolan said in interviews that the ice beneath them was cracking during filming, and the crew had divers on standby in case someone fell through. The remote setting of the location also reinforces the idea that Bruce has traveled to the ends of the earth to find purpose and control his fear. By choosing real ice over artificial sets, Nolan didn't just enhance the film's aesthetic but amplified its soul. Number 14. Bruce Wayne's mansion was a real British estate. One of the most iconic settings in the Batman Begins universe is Wayne Manor, the ancestral home of Bruce Wayne. The mansion serves as both sanctuary and symbol where Bruce was raised, his parents were murdered outside, and the transformation into Batman quietly begins. While many blockbuster films build lavish sets or rely on digital effects to create such grand locations, Christopher Nolan chose to film Wayne Manor at a real historical British estate, Mentmore Towers in Buckinghamshire, England. Mentmore Towers is a massive 19th-century English country house, originally built between 1852 and 1854 for the Rothschild banking family. The estate's grandeur and historical weight gave the mansion a believable legacy. In the world of Batman Begins, the Wayne family is not just wealthy. They are old money, aristocratic, and deeply rooted in Gotham's history. Mentmore Towers helped convey that lineage. Production designer Nathan Crowley worked to seamlessly blend the mansion's real-world architecture with the needs of the story. Interestingly, Mentmore Towers wasn't just chosen for its aesthetic. It was also chosen because it had a history in film. The mansion had previously been featured in movies like Eyes Wide Shut and The Mummy Returns, making it a favorite among filmmakers seeking lavish, timeless settings. This is especially important when Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows burn Wayne Manor to the ground. Watching such a grand structure go up in flames hits the audience hard. That scene wasn't filmed at Mentmore but on a massive replica built specifically to be destroyed. Mentmore Towers brought real-world elegance and authenticity to Batman Begins. It wasn't just a digital location, but a breathing piece of history. Number 13. Christian Bale auditioned in Val Kilmer's old Batsuit. Long before Christian Bale officially became Batman, he had to face a strange and unexpected test. No custom-made Batsuit was waiting for him when he auditioned for Batman Begins, so Bale was asked to perform his screen test in Val Kilmer's old rubber Batsuit from Batman Forever, and it nearly broke him. At first, the idea of wearing a previous Batman suit for an audition might sound nostalgic, but for Bale, it was a borderline traumatic experience. Kilmer's suit had been designed nearly a decade earlier, with a different body shape in mind, and with very little concern for comfort or breathability. By the time Bale wore it, the heat inside it was stifling. According to behind-the-scenes accounts, Bale was dripping with sweat within minutes of putting it on. The headpiece was so tight it clamped around his skull, and the neck was rigid, restricting his ability to move or even turn his head. Bale later recalled, "I was trying to do this intimidating performance," he joked in interviews, "and I was just trying not to faint." But ironically, it was in that moment of sweating, gasping, and almost passing out that Bale's version of Batman began to emerge. Instead of letting the discomfort weaken his performance, he used it to his advantage. And so, standing in the sweaty shell of Kilmer's suit, Bale delivered his lines in what would become his now famous Batman voice. It was raw, unexpected, and intimidating, and it caught Christopher Nolan's attention immediately. Nolan later admitted that Bale's ability to own the role, even in such a ridiculous, ill-fitting costume, was one of the key reasons he got the part. What started as a challenge became a defining moment. The experience shaped how Bale would later approach the real Batsuit designed for Batman Begins. Number 12. The Batmobile could jump 30 feet in Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan reimagined nearly every aspect of the Dark Knight mythos, including one of its most iconic elements, the Batmobile. The Tumbler, a rugged, military-inspired beast of a machine that looks like a cross between a tank, a Lamborghini, and a stealth jet, is as powerful as it looks on the outside. What many fans don't know is that it's not just another prop, but a fully functional vehicle capable of performing actual high-speed stunts, including jumping over 30 feet through the air. Building it was no small feat. The Tumbler was constructed from scratch with a chassis designed specifically for the film. It had a 500-horsepower Chevy V8 engine, custom-built suspension, off-road tires capable of handling any terrain, and a unique cockpit design that allowed Christian Bale to sit in a reclined position, mimicking a Formula One driver. All these are nothing compared to its ability to jump. This wasn't a special effect. The team engineered the Tumbler to make real physical jumps of up to 30 feet. One of the most memorable moments in Batman Begins was when the Tumbler leaped across a series of rooftops in Gotham. It may surprise you to know that this was achieved using real stunt driving and real mechanical lifts, without the use of green screen or digital trickery. Stunt driver George Cottle trained for weeks to master the Tumbler's unconventional handling and size. Only a few working Tumblers were built for the film, each tailored for specific purposes, some for jumps, some for interior shots, and others for high-speed chases. In the end, the Tumbler did more than just serve Batman. It redefined what a superhero's vehicle could be. Number 11. Cillian Murphy originally auditioned for Batman. When Cillian Murphy first stepped into the Batman Begins audition room, he wasn't there to become a villain. He was aiming to become Batman, long before he terrified audiences as the fear-inducing Doctor. Jonathan Crane, aka the Scarecrow, Murphy was in serious contention to play Bruce Wayne himself. Before then, he was a rising star known for indie films like 28 Days Later, and his piercing blue eyes and enigmatic presence made him an intriguing option for Nolan's darker, more cerebral vision of Batman. During his audition, he even wore Val Kilmer's old Batsuit, just like Christian Bale did. Although the suit didn't fit him quite right, his performance left a deep impression on Nolan. Despite his compelling screen test, Murphy ultimately didn't land the role of Batman. This was only because physically, he lacked the imposing stature Nolan felt was necessary to fill the suit convincingly. However, the audition was far from a failure. Nolan was so taken with Murphy's performance and screen presence that he created a different place for him in the story. He cast Murphy as Dr. Jonathan Crane, the sinister psychiatrist who moonlights as the Scarecrow. The result was one of the most haunting performances in the trilogy. Murphy's Scarecrow was unlike any Batman villain audiences had seen before. His fearful delivery of lines like, "Would you like to see my mask?" became instantly iconic. What makes the story even more interesting is that Murphy would go on to appear in all three films of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, making him the only villain to have that distinction. In hindsight, Murphy might not have become Batman, but he arguably found the role he was born to play in Nolan's universe. Number 10. The cast wore earpieces for Nolan's quiet direction. On the explosive, high-stakes set of Batman Begins, where car chases, fireballs, and dramatic stunts were the order of the day, one thing stood out in stark contrast to all the noise, and that thing was the near whisper of director Christopher Nolan. Unlike many directors known for loud voices, bullhorns, or barked commands from behind a monitor, Nolan is remarkably soft-spoken. His quiet demeanor and calm delivery are part of what makes him unique and unexpectedly challenging to work with on a film of this scale. On the set of Batman Begins, Nolan's voice was often so hushed that actors and crew couldn't hear him over the typical background noise of a film set. To solve this problem, many members of the cast and crew wore earpieces connected to a live audio feed of Nolan's microphone. This allowed them to hear his subtle direction in real time. Actors such as Christian Bale, Liam Neeson, and Michael Caine all adapted to this style. Bale even mentioned in interviews that Nolan never raised his voice, even during moments of high pressure or complex action coordination. Nolan's quiet delivery reflected his collaborative style, encouraging actors to explore their characters rather than dictating exact performances. Even during large-scale scenes like the Tumbler's police chase through Gotham or the chaotic finale involving Scarecrow's fear toxin being unleashed, Nolan would often be the quietest person on set. Number 9. The bats were mostly CGI. Computer-generated imagery. In a film where realism was the guiding principle, one might expect that everything, including the bats, was as practical as possible. However, despite director Christopher Nolan's love for real stunts and physical sets, the swarming bats that fill several key moments in Batman Begins were largely brought to life through the magic of CGI. From the opening scenes in the well to Bruce Wayne's transformation into the Caped Crusader, bats play a symbolic and visual role throughout the film. Initially, Nolan and the visual effects team explored the use of real bats. In some scenes, real bats were filmed in controlled environments or used as reference points for lighting, movement, and behavior. However, bats are notoriously difficult to work with. They're sensitive to light and sound, and virtually impossible to direct. Additionally, the scale and precision of hundreds or thousands of bats needed to fly in coordinated patterns were simply beyond the capabilities of practical effects. That's where the visual team stepped in. Using cutting-edge CGI for the time, they crafted realistic digital bats by studying the flight mechanics of actual species, including how their wings flex, their erratic motion, and how they interact with light. The result was a swarm that felt alive, chaotic, and yet oddly beautiful. Number 8. Michael Caine thought he was playing a butler Kike in Downton Abbey. When legendary actor Michael Caine was approached to play Alfred Pennyworth in Batman Begins, his first instinct was still the proper polished British butler, serving tea, keeping quiet, and staying mostly in the background, just like the dignified staff of Downton Abbey. However, that expectation was quickly shattered once Caine dove into the script and uncovered just how layered and untraditional this version of Alfred was. Caine once joked in an interview, "I thought I was going to be walking around with a tray saying, 'Dinner is served,' then I read the script and realized Alfred was not just a butler. He was more like Bruce Wayne's rock." Christopher Nolan had no intention of casting Alfred as a mere domestic figure. Nolan reimagined Alfred as someone who had lived through war, who had seen the worst of humanity, and who now tried to guide a broken, grieving young man into becoming a force for good. This twist on the character fascinated Caine. Nolan said to him, "He's not your average butler. He's ex-Special Air Service, a military man, loyal to the Wayne family to the bone, but also fully capable of holding his own." That military background explained Alfred's composure, his competence, and even his occasional willingness to challenge Bruce directly. Once Caine understood the new direction, he fully embraced it. His delivery of lines like, "Why do we fall, sir?" "So that we can learn to pick ourselves up," added emotional weight to a film known for its intensity and darkness. The transformation of Alfred Pennyworth from a background servant to a fully fleshed-out character helped elevate the emotional core of Batman Begins. Number 7. Katie Holmes was Nolan's first choice. When Christopher Nolan began casting for Batman Begins, one of his most critical decisions was choosing the right actress to play Rachel Dawes, the film's emotional core and Bruce Wayne's childhood friend. And from the very start, Nolan had someone specific in mind, who was none other than Katie Holmes. At the time, Holmes was best known for her role as Joey Potter on Dawson's Creek, where she had built a reputation as an actress who could portray intelligence, depth, and emotional strength. Nolan was deliberate in shaping Rachel's character. She wasn't going to be a damsel in distress or a mere romantic interest. Rachel needed to stand toe-to-toe with Bruce Wayne, challenge him ethically, and hold him accountable to the man his parents raised him to be. Holmes's grounded presence, according to Nolan, made her a natural fit. Nolan later explained in interviews, "Katie had the combination of warmth and strength I was looking for. She felt like someone who could reach Bruce in ways others couldn't." Holmes, enthusiastic about taking part in such a bold reimagining of Batman, jumped at the opportunity. Holmes played Rachel with a quiet conviction. Her delivery wasn't flashy, but rather measured and sincere. Despite mixed reviews of her performance, Holmes remained a central figure in the film's emotional landscape. However, Holmes did not return for The Dark Knight, making Maggie Gyllenhaal step into the role. While there's been speculation about scheduling conflicts and creative choices, her departure didn't diminish the foundation she laid in Batman Begins. Nolan's instinct in casting her played a significant role in the film's success. Number 6. Christian Bale kept losing his voice.
Where were the other drugs going?
I never knew. I don't know. I swear to God.
Swear to me!
When Batman Begins hit theaters in 2005, one of the most talked about elements, aside from its dark tone, was Christian Bale's growling, animalistic Batman voice. What many fans didn't know at the time was that maintaining that voice came at a real physical cost. To achieve that voice, Christian Bale altered his voice when donning the cowl. Bale reasoned that if Bruce Wayne was trying to terrify criminals, his voice had to be intimidating, unrecognizable, even monstrous. But it wasn't easy to sustain. According to multiple crew members, Bale would often lose his voice completely during shooting. This phenomenon occurred more frequently during intense action scenes or sequences, particularly when Batman delivered longer lines. The strain of producing that guttural growl repeatedly across multiple takes would wear down his vocal cords. Filming had to be adjusted at times to allow Bale to rest his voice before production resumed. Bale once admitted in an interview, "I would go home some days and just not be able to speak at all. The voice took a toll, but I felt like it was important. I wanted Batman to sound like a creature, not a man in a suit." Despite the vocal fatigue and eventual controversy, Bale never wavered. He committed to the voice across all 3 films in the trilogy, knowing it was central to his portrayal of Batman. Number 5. The fear gas scenes used a special lens. In Batman Begins, one of the most unsettling and memorable elements was the fear gas, a chemical weapon used by Dr. Jonathan Crane, also known as the Scarecrow, to induce terrifying hallucinations in his victims. When this chemical is exposed, people see more than just frightening illusions. They experience their worst nightmares with vivid clarity. However, bringing those horrifying sequences to life wasn't just a matter of acting or visual effects. Christopher Nolan employed a specially modified lens and experimental camera techniques to film those scenes, imbuing them with a surreal and disturbing texture that felt like a psychological force. To achieve this, the cinematography team used a specially modified lens system, developed specifically to capture distorted and warped imagery without relying heavily on visual effects. When these lenses are paired with infrared filters, they produce eerie visuals that exaggerate shadows, stretch faces, and transform familiar environments into nightmarish versions of themselves. The effect of this is more chilling than anything achieved with typical CGI, and it came largely from what the camera saw. Similarly, when Scarecrow dons his terrifying burlap mask and sprays his victims, their perception of him changes. His eyes glow, his voice warps, and his head seems to boil with smoke. These in-camera tricks aligned with Nolan's overall philosophy for Batman Begins, which is to ground the extraordinary in the real. The result was deeply unsettling. The hallucination sequences in Batman Begins stand out for both their content and how tangible they feel. Number 4. The subway fight was done without wires.
Never learned to mind your surroundings.
One of the most thrilling and climactic sequences in Batman Begins is the subway showdown between Batman and Ra's al Ghul aboard the speeding monorail racing toward Wayne Tower. The terrifying high stakes have been a challenge for both Bruce Wayne and all of Gotham City, but what makes it even more impressive is that none of it was achieved with wire work. Christopher Nolan insisted that the entire fight be done practically, with the actors and stunt team acting on solid ground. Wire-assisted fighting in that era had already become a standard, especially in superhero films, but Nolan said no. This decision was radical. He wanted him to be the real man trained in martial arts and grounded in brutal, efficient combat. Every punch had to feel like it hurt. Every movement had to carry weight. Christian Bale and Liam Neeson trained extensively to learn their choreography in the subway fight. When Batman and Ra's al Ghul throw down in the cramped space of the monorail car, they look like two men who are fighting to the death, not staging a ballet. Filming the sequence was grueling. The subway car was built as a full-scale practical set mounted on hydraulics to simulate motion. Sparks flew from the walls as the rail system malfunctioned. Steam effects, practical explosions, and timed lighting helped create the illusion of chaos without leaning on computer graphics. The result was a fight that felt grounded, dangerous, and urgent. Number 3. Liam Neeson pretended he wasn't the villain. One of the most effective twists in Batman Begins comes when Ducard, the seemingly wise and noble mentor to Bruce Wayne, reveals his true identity as Ra's al Ghul, the mastermind behind the League of Shadows and the film's true villain. However, what makes this reveal even more satisfying is how Liam Neeson and the studio collaborated to keep the secret. They even lied to the press, fans, and sometimes even to the cast about who Neeson was playing. In the early 2000s, superhero films were entering a new era of stardom. The internet has become a breeding ground for leaks, spoilers, and fan theories. To maintain the ruse, Warner Brothers and Neeson publicly stated that he was playing Henri Ducard. This character was known from Batman lore, who in the comics was merely a mentor figure, not a villain. Neeson took his role in the deception seriously. In interviews before the film's release, he dodged questions and gave vague answers. Even during press tours, he played along. The twist, when it finally came in the third act, caught audiences off guard. After spending the majority of the film respecting and learning from Ducard, Bruce and the audience realize they've been betrayed. The man who taught him to master fear, to wield justice with purpose, was the very person trying to destroy Gotham. Nolan believed that preserving that moment was worth the secrecy, and Neeson agreed, seeing it as part of the responsibility of the actor to serve the story, even off-screen. In later interviews, he confessed that misleading the press was strange, but necessary. "It was fun," Neeson admitted. "We were in on something, and the payoff was absolutely worth it." Number 2. Nolan filmed many scenes in real locations. One of the defining traits of Batman Begins is how tangible and grounded Gotham City feels. Unlike many superhero films that rely heavily on green screens and digital backdrops, Christopher Nolan chose to root his Batman universe in the real world. He achieved this by using actual cities, streets, and buildings, particularly the city of Chicago, to bring Gotham to life. Chicago was the perfect stand-in for Gotham. The city's imposing architecture, looming skyscrapers, steel bridges, and industrial sprawl gave Gotham a sense of grit and verticality that no green screen rendering could replicate. Key scenes, including Bruce Wayne's return to Gotham, Batman's first night out, and the epic chase with the tumbler across rooftops and lower streets, were all filmed using practical effects in real environments. Even the Wayne Enterprises building was a real skyscraper in downtown Chicago. The IBM building was a structure designed by famed architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. The Narrows, Gotham's crime-infested slum area, was partially built on a soundstage. However, elements of it were inspired by locations in London and Chicago's darker alleyways. Nolan's approach also impacted sound, atmosphere, and pacing. The noises of passing cars, trains, and city life weren't artificially created but recorded live. This dedication to realism would go on to influence an entire generation of superhero films. Ultimately, Nolan's decision to shoot on location worked. Number 1. The film changed superhero movies forever. When Batman Begins hit theaters in 2005, it wasn't just another comic book movie. It was a course correction for an entire genre. After the catastrophic failure of Batman and Robin in 1997, which turned Gotham into a neon joke and buried the Batman franchise in camp, no one believed The Dark Knight could be taken seriously again. It was at that time that Christopher Nolan came into the picture. Nolan's approach treated Bruce Wayne not just as a billionaire with gadgets, but as a man shaped by trauma, purpose, and fear. The storyline posed real questions such as, what motivates a man to fight crime dressed as a bat? How does fear work as both a weapon and an obstacle? Can one person change the system from within and without? These are not just musings, but also the film's emotional core. Nolan's use of practical effects, real-world locations, and psychological realism paved the way for a more grounded, cinematic universe that influenced both Marvel and DC's strategies moving forward. Batman Begins served as a blueprint for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which officially launched in 2008 with Iron Man. The greatest legacy of Batman Begins lies in its restoration of credibility to superhero films. Studios began taking risks again, hiring directors with unique visions, and exploring serious themes beneath the surface of the cape and cowl. Without Batman Begins, it's hard to imagine we'd have films like Logan, Joker, or even Black Panther. Batman Begins didn't just reboot Batman, it rebooted the way we tell stories about heroes. It proved that a man in a mask could still reveal the most human truths, setting a gold standard that continues to shape the genre today. What have you learned from these weird facts about Batman Begins? Share with us in the comments and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.